Mm. Mental Illness as an Adverse Childhood Experience by Jaden Bulmer. Introduction to ACEs. What is the ACEs survey? ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. The ACE survey is a tool used to categorize the effects of ACE out of 10. Children impacted by ACEs are at a greater risk of poor development or difficulties later in life. Examples of ACEs. ACEs are considered traumatic experiences that occur to children before the age of 17. Topics include, but are not limited to, abuse, mental illness, substance abuse, and neglect. Um, what are social determinants of health? Social determinants of health are non-medical factors that can negatively impact someone's health. Social determinants of health can often increase the risk of ACEs within children as well. Some examples of social determinants include financial struggle, housing, employment troubles, and lack of health care. My ACE theory, mental illness. First off, what is mental illness? Mental illness are conditions that affect a person's thinking, feeling, mood, or behavior. Examples of a mental illness would be anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. My main focus of this slide will uh, will be to show how parental mental illness can negatively impact a child's development, and how mental illness can also affect children and must be caught early to ensure proper development. Understanding that mental illness affects more than just the person it affects. So, for example, if it affects a parent, it also affects the child. And as an EC, it's important to understand that to best support not only the child, but their family as well, and provide them with resources to help them. How mental illness can negatively impact child development. As we all know, at a young age, child development is crucial. So, as your job as an ECE, it's your role to support all areas of development. Physical. Mental illness can cause sleep disturbances, affect appetite, and increase stress hormones. Cognitive. Reduced attention, trouble regulating emotions, delayed problem-solving skills, lower academic performance, and more. Emotional. Difficulty regulating emotions, increased sadness, fear, anxiety, and anger, as well as lower self-esteem within children. Social, trouble developing relationships, increased social withdrawal, and increased conflict with peers, educators, and guardians. Language, difficulty expressing thoughts, emotions, needs, and wants, vocabulary delays, and decreased social interaction. So, as an EC, if you notice that a child is lacking in some of these areas, it could potentially be a mental illness, not in all cases, but it's important to take note of this and remember as an EC to seek help if the child may need. Why is mental illness important for ECs to understand? Recently there's been a large increase of mental health challenges among both children and adults. Early intervention can improve long-term outcomes and support development for both children and their families. So, as a role as an ECE working with young children, if you can help with early intervention and catching that mental illness at a young age, it can greatly impact the child in positive ways and help their development as they continue to grow. At the bottom here, it just mentions young people are also particularly vulnerable to developing mental health problems, with an estimated 1 in 8 5 to 19-year-olds having a mental health disorder. It's also important to remember that most people, not most, but a large amount of people with mental health disorders don't even know. So, for example, anxiety, a lot of people have anxiety disorders and may lack in an area of development, and it just goes undetected. So, it's important to recognize this and seek help if needed. Why did I choose this topic? I chose this topic because mental illness is a commonly misunderstood ACE. People from all different cultures, financial status, and backgrounds can be impacted by mental illness. Many people struggle with mental illnesses like anxiety disorders and don't even know, as I mentioned in the last slide. As an REC, I know the importance of understanding the severe impact of mental illness and can excuse me, understand the severe mental illness can have on families and how we best support the children and families impacted. So my family personally, I have a brother that does experience mental illness, so I do know the importance of when he was young age seeking help and seeing professionals, and where he's come now from dealing with anxiety, depression, and Asperger's, and to now where he is being able to have social conversations, work a full-time job, which when he was younger wasn't even in the picture of thinking that'd be possible. So I do know the importance of seeking help and that it can make a great impact. So what does this look like in your ECEC practice? In EC setting, how to recognize if a child or family may be struggling from mental illness. So these are just some ways. It's not always the same. It's not a one size fits all, so to speak. Children affected may withdraw from peers, struggle to regulate emotions, or display anxiety and aggressive behavior. Families that are affected, so parents or guardians, may struggle financially. That's often intertwined with anxiety and stress. They may need access to mental health services. So again, you can recommend them or have your coordinator or director recommend them to different services that can help support them. They may display aggressive or inconsistent behavior. And another sign that they may be struggling without even knowing is they struggle to maintain routines such as pick up and drop off. So if you notice week after week, dad, for example, is forgetting to pick up their child or showing up late, or it just is a reoccurring trend, that could be a sign that they're struggling with some type of mental illness and may not even know. So it's important to communicate and seek help if needed. So, what populations does mental illnesses impact and affect? Mental illness can impact really anyone from all backgrounds or status, but they have a greater impact typically on single parents, lower income household, families experiencing multiple ACE, and newcomers and refugees to family. So, like I mentioned, the biggest thing I find about mental illness is it really can impact anyone. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your financial status is. It doesn't matter if they don't care if you're rich or if you're poor. Mental disorders are real and they can affect anyone, any age or cultural beliefs. So, how is this information relevant as an ECE? As an ECE, it's important to understand how connected mental health and child development are to support overall well-being. As I mentioned earlier in the slide, just how mental illnesses impact each area of development negatively. It's important to recognize that and understand how mental illness impacts both children and their families. Doing so will benefit your practices and ability to provide support. So again, going back to my brother who really struggled when he was a kid, to now he's a grown adult working a full-time job and living a very good life. It's important to recognize this at a young age and seek help if you believe a child may need some prevention matters, or sorry, measures. So for personal support, promote coping strategies and emotional regulation skills. Provide, as an EC, you can provide the child with a safe and inclusive classroom environment. And if you believe it is serious, seek help from professionals if and when needed. For relationship support, building a strong, positive relationship with the child, and then as well as communicating with families of the children frequently, can help with a child struggling with mental illness. So, for example, if you know there's a child in your classroom setting that is struggling with mental illness, it's important to communicate with their family frequently to update on how they're doing, how their development is going, so they can pass that on to professionals, and that way you can create a plan of action to best support that child. Um, Again, another prevention measure would be community resources. So just a resource I have here in southwestern Ontario would be the Southwest Healthline. They provide a variety of services to help support people with ongoing mental health issues living in our communities. So that's just one example. There's many different support systems out there in and around Ontario to help anyone struggling with mental illness. Seeking help from professionals is very important. A person's mental health can change over time depending on multiple factors, meaning mental illness can often improve if properly managed and taken care of. So again, if you catch it at a young age, especially when working with young children, it's important to catch that and recognize at a young age that they may need help. And it's our role as a ECE to do so. Next, I have my case study here. The Thompson family is a single parent household that consists of mother Jessica Thompson, 28 years old, and her 3-year-old son, Ethan Thompson. Currently, they live in a one-bedroom apartment here in London, Ontario. Ethan currently attends a preschool room at a childcare center. He's been there for the past 10 months. Jessica was born and raised in Canada and has her high school diploma. She is recently unemployed after losing her job at No Frills due to her mental health challenges worsening. She's diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety. Over the past year, her symptoms have increased greatly and have become very hard to manage. Her symptoms consist of low energy, social withdrawal, and lack of daily routines. She's been struggling to provide proper care for Ethan, and as a result, Ethan's been showing symptoms such as difficulty with emotional regulation, separation issues, and difficulty focusing on tasks in the childcare setting. Over the past 10 months that Ethan's been in the center, Ethan has attended his current childcare center. Ethan educators mentioned to Jessica they've actually seen a decline in Ethan's development and overall well-being. Despite Jessica wanting to provide for Ethan, her mental illness has gotten too severe, and wait times to see mental health services are very long. She feels lost and honestly unsure how to properly support Ethan while she's managing her own mental health issues. As an REC, how can we support the Thompson family using community resources for our understanding of ACEs? So these are just a couple support options for the Thompson family that as an REC you can use if you believe it may need in the classroom environment. So the Thompson family is in desperate need of support and help. As an REC, here are some valuable resources you can provide them to best support their well-being. So for Jessica, the mother, uh, one source would be the CMHA Addiction and Mental Health Services. So CMHA offers 24/7 support, both online and it does have 24/7 walk-in options. Um, offer a back on track program, which could help her get back on her feet, land a job. And the one that's specifically for her and mental illnesses I'd recommend would be her community mental health clinic and family support services. This would help her just help with her mental illness and also help build that relationship back with her child and best support Ethan. Um, at CMHA, they help system management and improve overall quality of life. So they could really help Jessica get back on her feet to best support Ethan and be there for her child. For Ethan, I'd recommend Marymount Family Support and Crisis Center. That's again here in London, Ontario. They offer a child mental wellness program. This could be beneficial for Ethan because it teaches coping strategies, mental wellness, and relationship building skills. Um, they also do offer children's group, which may support Ethan in improving expressing feelings, problem solving skills, and overall development. As we do know, he's been on a decline the past 10 months, so this would be an option to get him back on his feet and continue developing properly. Conclusion: ACE and social determinants of health are strongly impacted by social factors such as income, background, and social support. My specific ACE of mental illness taught me just how large of an impact this had on both children and adults' emotional regulation, well-being, development, and sense of self. Key takeaways in REC is to provide help and resources as soon as possible to reduce symptoms and help both children and adults get back on the right path. So, for example, the case study, it is really important to get both Ethan and his mother back on track to both support their development and their relationship at home. Lastly, here are my references.